I am introducing a man of many talents, a businessman extraordinaire. He's a world-renowned real estate trainer and a business coach, and he is an icon in the real estate world. This man has single-handedly built the largest real estate revenue share team in South Africa, and he is still growing at a phenomenal pace. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax. Maybe you shouldn't relax that much. While Steven inspires us with his perspective of the four horsemen of the real estate apocalypse. Now let us find out if you are riding on that white horse, if you're on that black horse, or if you are the rider on that pale horse. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome on stage the man himself, the Cavalier, Steven Johnstone. Ready. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So, I think on any independent sort of objective assessment, it's fair to say that the growth of eXp in South Africa has been rapid and dramatic. You know, we're in the country for 5 years now, and we are, very conservatively speaking, in the top 5 agencies in the country. We're the top independent real estate company in the country. We have 1,500 agents. We are one of the top, if not the top, listing company in just about every province of South Africa. And I think it's fair to say that we have, by any objective measurement, disrupted the real estate industry in South Africa. And the question I want to ask today is why? What has happened here? What explains this phenomenon? And I'm going to discuss this under 4 headings to you today. The first one is 4 factors that predict disruption in any industry. So these are the 4 horsemen of a coming apocalypse in any industry. And I'm going to introduce you to some research that's been done by Harvard Business School. Harvard Business School, one of, if not the top business school in the world. The research that they've done into when disruption happens in an industry. And among some other factors that they isolate, I'm going to show you 4 factors that they isolate that were definitely in place in the real estate industry in South Africa pre-2020, which is when eXp launched. Then, once we've discussed those 4 horsemen, I then want to talk about why it is that eXp could step in to that space so effectively. So, if the indicators were all there, that disruption was coming to the real estate industry, why was it eXp Realty that could be the disruptor? What is it about their model? And then lastly, very quickly at the end, I want to finish off with a quick discussion around what this means for you, because I want this to be compelling to you. I want you feeling at the end of my talk today and at the end of the 2 days together with us that, wow, actually this business eXp is intelligent. It's well thought out. The strategy is genius. It is compelling. And perhaps there are opportunities in this that you should be taking advantage of for yourself. Okay, so let's get straight into it. And we're going to start with our first heading, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or 4 factors that predict disruption in any industry. So there is a field of study in economics called disruption susceptibility. I'm sure Dr. Loof would know all about disruption susceptibility. And I'm sure that you can guess from the name what disruption susceptibility studies is. How susceptible or how vulnerable is any industry to being disrupted right now? And as it turns out, Harvard Business School have done decades of research into disruption susceptibility, and they have isolated certain common factors that are always seem to be in place in an industry before it gets disrupted. And I'm going to show you now what those 4 are. So the first one is what they call overserved customers. So this is Horsemen number 1. And this is how the good folks at Harvard put that. They said, disruption is near when the old school companies in an industry are offering products and services loaded with what they assume to be valuable features, but which drive up the cost and complexity. Now, just remember those 2 things. We're going to see that a lot. The 2 things that cause disruption to happen is increased price and increased complexity of getting your product to your customers. Well, overserved customers is when you got all these things that are being offered that drive up the cost and complexity, but they are not actually valued by the customer. In other words, the old school companies in an industry are charging the clients for all sorts of things that the clients don't actually want. Overserved customers. Okay, so let's take an example of that so that you can relate to this. I want to take an example from the airline industry. So for many, many years, decades, it's been the prevailing view amongst the full service airlines like SAA and BA or whatever, that if they wanted to remain more competitive than their competitors and be more attractive to travelers, they had to add more and more features and benefits to what they were offering their clients. And so what you began to see through the years with airlines is that they added multiple cabin classes to their airlines. And then you got complimentary meals on all the flights that you took. And then you were allowed to check in a certain amount of baggage. And there's baggage allowances for different ticket classes. And then for some ticket classes, you get complimentary lounge access. There's a whole network of lounges around the world now. And then, of course, there were those complex loyalty programs that you were meant to be able to build up miles with and get free tickets. I never figured that one out myself. Loyalty programs. So that's cost being driven up. Then you got complexity being driven up by how they delivered their tickets to the client. So just wind the clock back maybe 20, 30, 40 years, and you've got an industry which depended on ticket offices and, in fact, more commonly, travel agencies. So you've got this entire middle layer of intermediaries, and it was always made out to be a highly dangerous thing to book your own travel, especially an international flight. This is not something you wanted to do on your own. You were going to mess it up. You'd lose money. You'd get ripped off. No, you had to go through a travel agent. But of course, all of that stuff drove up the price of the tickets and the complexity of getting a ticket. Meanwhile, what most customers care about in the airline industry, what 99% of travelers care about is this: get me from A to B safely, on time, as cheaply as possible. Now, for those of you who flew down from another city of South Africa to come to the conference, tell me that wasn't true of you. Yeah, you went on to Chem Air, you went on to FlySaf Air, you shopped out, you just bought the cheapest ticket to Cape Town, didn't you? So along came some very clever folks at one point, and they said to themselves, I wonder what would happen if we started an airline, and instead of adding all sorts of features to our airline, we did the opposite. We stripped out everything that the clients don't actually care about, and in the process, we make it easier to get a ticket, and we bring down the cost of the tickets. And so the low-cost airline was born. And low-cost airlines have changed travel. Not just domestic travel, you're starting to see it change international travel. There's an international carrier that's now flying, I think it's called Norse or Nordic or something like that, which is now kind of a low-cost international flight. If you want luggage, you buy extra luggage. If you want a meal, you can buy the meal. Okay, so I want to apply that to the real estate industry now, this thing of overserved customers. But before we can do that, it's very important that you understand who the customer in the real estate industry is. Because it would be tempting to think that the customer of the real estate industry are the buyers and sellers of property. That's not the customer in the real estate industry. And this is a principle that Glenn Sanford, the founder of eXp Realty, understood from the very beginning. The customers in the real estate industry are the agents. This is how real estate works. You've got real estate companies the way they grow and thrive and become profitable is by attracting more agents to them. They are trying to build up their agent base. And then you've got the customer, the agents of the world, and they are choosing which agency they're going to work for based on the value that agency offers them. Those are the two transacting parties in real estate. Okay, now, with that in mind, could it be said, as we talk about this concept of over-serving customers, could it be said that pre-2020 in South Africa, real estate companies were driving up the price and complexity of agents doing business with them by including all sorts of things in their model that agents don't actually care about? Answer, yes. And the primary example of that is brick and mortar offices. Do you understand that if you own a real estate company and you insist on having brick and mortar offices in every town and city of South Africa, all over the country, and every one of those offices have got layers of staff and complexity in them, do you understand that radically restricts your ability to compensate your agents properly? Because your costs are so high. But as it turns out, brick and mortar offices are not actually necessary to run a successful real estate company. eXp have proven that. They've got 90,000 agents in 31 countries or whatever it is. This is no longer a theory. You can build a very good real estate business as a cloud-based business. Okay, we'll return to that when we talk about eXp in a sec. The second predictor of disruption in an industry, according to the good folks at Harvard, is this thing of technology changes. So I want to read to you what they said. Disruption is about to happen when new technology is introduced into an industry that makes it cheaper and easier, cost and complexity, for the supplier and the customer to do business with each other. So new technology comes on the scene that allows the real estate company and the agents to do their business together easier and cheaper. New technology. So let's take an example of how new technology can disrupt an industry. This is something you'll all relate to. Think of what Netflix did to the traditional DVD store. So how many of you remember piling your kids into the back of your car at 5 p.m. and driving down to the local Mr. Video or Blockbuster, whatever you had down the road from you, going into the store, which was people everywhere, rushing to the little slots and to see if there was anything available, and at the same time not trying to lose your children at the same time? Do you remember the trauma of that? So that's been there, done that. We raised our kids in the DVD era. Well, in a few short years, new technology, live streaming, has completely destroyed the DVD store. And why? Because of new technology, it's cheaper, but it's much easier, much more convenient to rent a movie at home. Now, the same thing could be said of Uber. They're a tech company. It's just a clever app on your phone. They don't own vehicles. They don't have dispatch offices and complex radio systems they've got to maintain. They just came in with an app. They have completely transformed public transport because of clever technology. Okay, so let's apply that to the real estate industry. It might seem like a lifetime ago to you now, but do you realize that like 20 years ago, there was no such thing as an online business meeting? Skype had just been invented in 2003, but Skype really was used to speak to your family overseas or whatever. There was no Google Meetings, there was no Zoom, there were no webinars. And so if I owned a traditional real estate company back 20 years ago and I wanted to grow, I first of all had to pick a geographic location. I had to pick a suburb that I was going to now put a footprint in. And then in order to recruit agents, I needed to interview them. And that required me to do that in person in a building that I was paying for. And then once I'd recruited a whole bunch of agents, in order to bring them into some kind of team where they felt supported and they were having some kind of collaboration, and I would do training for them, etc., all of that had to be done in person, in an office, with a bunch of staff for the office that I was paying for. So the traditional model of real estate has been dramatically impacted by the advance of being able to transact online. All that was slowly beginning to change in 2020. Okay, well, already you were starting to see some people put their toe in the water of maybe trying a cloud-based business. But then something happened in 2020 that drove the entire world into meeting and transacting online, and it radically accelerated the development of the technologies to help us do business online. What was that? COVID. So here we are today, just 5 years after COVID, and it doesn't even seem strange to us that we now do most of our events and our interviews and our training and our team meetings and our mastermind groups and so many more things online. The world has completely changed in the last 5 years. New technology, enter disruption. Okay, then the third predictor of disruption, according to the folks at Harvard, is this thing that they call business model rigidity. Okay, so let me read that to you. In industries that are ripe for disruption, what you often find is that the existing old school businesses actually cannot pursue the new model without destroying their existing business. Okay, so that's what they call business model rigidity. You actually are inflexible. You cannot change your business model even if you see the industry's going in another direction, because if you do, you'll cripple yourself. So a great example of that is Kodak. Now, when you think of Kodak, I'm sure you don't think of the digital camera. When you think of Kodak, you think of those old black spools, for those of you who are as old as I am, that used to open the back flap of your camera and you put a spool in there and wind it a little bit. You know, that's what you think of when you think of Kodak. Maybe you think of those orange disposable cameras. But do you know that Kodak actually invented the digital camera way back in 1975? But the problem was that by far the majority of Kodak's income as a company came from the sale of film, the chemicals that were used in the developing of film in all of the outlets around the world, the photo paper that they printed the photos on, and the printing machinery, and then the maintenance of those machinery and replacement parts for the printers. You see, the truth is that Kodak were never a camera company. They were a consumables company. And their entire income model was built around recurring income. People having to buy film and chemicals over and over again. And of course, digital photography completely eliminated all of the recurring revenue. And so they couldn't embrace it. And so their digital camera stayed in the vault, so to speak, at Kodak since 1975. Because they would have destroyed their existing business if they had embraced digital. Which is what opened the door for companies like Kodak and Nikon and Canon to come on the scene and completely dominate the digital photography market. Okay, so let's talk about old school real estate companies and business model rigidity. If I'm the owner of a traditional real estate franchise company, think of the first one that pops into your mind. And I've got a head office somewhere, and maybe I've got some regional offices in the major provinces of South Africa, and then I've got local estate agency offices on every street of every town. You know, there's one in every town and every suburb of the major cities. I've got hundreds and hundreds of offices all over the country. All of those offices have got staff and infrastructure in them. Do you understand that even if I do see that real estate is going online, and even if I can see that my agents can be supported better, truth be told, and compensated better if I do embrace a cloud-based model, do you understand that even if I wanted to, I could not go cloud-based without completely destroying myself financially? What am I going to do with all of those offices around the country? What are we going to do with all the long-term leases that we've signed? What are we going to do with all the staff in all of those offices? What are we going to do with all the people we've signed franchise agreements with? Folks, do you understand that the old school real estate companies have got a real problem? Business model rigidity. They're locked in. And that, of course, has created a massive gap for a cloud-based disruptor. Okay, then lastly, the fourth predictor of disruption is what Harvard called the network effect. So this is how they put it. Industries are ripe for disruption when a newcomer can quickly create a network effect within the community of their clients. Okay, what's this all about? Well, one of the biggest problems that the traditional model agencies have is how to create a truly collaborative culture across the entire company, across the country. And I know that because one of South Africa's biggest real estate companies, maybe the biggest, approached me a number of years ago, desperate for me to help them get the agents in their various offices around the country to start referring clients to each other. Seemed like a good idea, because it was never happening. See, the truth is that although the traditional model agencies, they have the same color, they have the same logo, they have the same branding above all of the offices in every town and city around South Africa, the truth is the agents in those offices never get to build relationships with each other and to collaborate with each other. And I'm not talking about the annual conference at Sun City. I'm talking about being able to build a truly collaborative culture where agents all around the country on a daily basis are building relationships with each other and going on a journey building their businesses together and collaborating. That's what we're talking about. And I can tell you now, the old school real estate companies have failed to do that. And what the researchers at Harvard tell us is that lack of collaborative culture opens the door if there is a newcomer into the industry that can genuinely bring people together all around the country in a meaningful, collaborative way. All right, so that then leads us to the next question. This is the second of the three headings. Why could eXp Realty step in so effectively? And I'll just briefly comment on each one of these. Let's talk about overserved customers. So we'll go through each of them one by one. So just remember the basic economics. You're an old school real estate company. All the brick and mortar offices you've got around the country and all of the layers of staff in all of those brick and mortar offices are driving up the cost and complexity of your business, which means you have to take a bigger split from your agents. That's the basic economics of the old school model. But here's the question. Let's think about overserving customers. Do agents actually care about brick and mortar offices? And I can tell you the answer to that question is no. The other question you ask then is, okay, let's talk about local management. All of these layers of staff, of local management in each of these offices. Do agents care about local management? Well, I've learned the answer to those two questions is no. Agents will join a cloud-based business if, number one, there is a well-built collaborative culture. If they feel like, man, this is a good place to be. And how many of you eXp agents would say you've made more friends with more agents from all around the country and you've shared deals with agents from every area all around the country more than you ever did in your brick and mortar business where you were based in office? Look at all the hands. That's the culture of eXp. So, agents will join a cloud-based business if there's a truly collaborative culture. Secondly, if the technology that the company gives them does truly, honestly empower them to build their business successfully without an office and without an admin person. In other words, if the systems are good enough. And folks, that's not a theory anymore. 1,500 agents have joined us in 5 years. We know that agents will join a cloud-based business. Okay, so because eXp, what this means is, because eXp had been able to strip out the cost and complexity of brick and mortar offices and all of the local management, the layers of staff, it makes them far more profitable than other real estate companies, which means they can compensate you, the agent, far better. in a way that the traditional agency simply cannot do. All right, new technology. All I want to say on new technology is use this as an illustration of how powerful eXp's technology is. Over the last 5 years, we've built one of the biggest real estate companies in this country, and yet get this, as a staff complement, eXp only has 24 staff members in South Africa. 24 staff for 1,500 agents in every province scattered right across South Africa, 24 staff members. Folks, our competitors who are a similar size to us have got hundreds of staff members in buildings all over South Africa. And again, why that's important is because it makes eXp far more efficient, and efficiency means profitability. And their profitability means that they can now give you a great split with a cap and give you shares in the company and let you keep all your third-party incomes and share the revenues of the company every month with you if you help to attract other agents to the company. That's why their compensation plan is so good. Then the third one, the third one is business model rigidity. Again, the point is obvious here. eXp did not have any business model rigidity. They didn't have to protect an old school disaster of hundreds of offices with staff all around the country. They could just come into the country, they've got all the technology, and they just built a cloud-based business from the start. They didn't have the rigidity, and so they became the disruptor. And then the last one is the network effect. So traditional agencies struggle to get their agents to collaborate. Well, eXp completely changed that when their model brings every agent in the country into one shared environment. One shared environment. So there's one community of agents, there's one leadership team, there's one principal, there's one conversation. In my own group, there's one WhatsApp group for 1,000 agents. We do one team meeting, family time, every 2 weeks on a Monday. You're all invited. People from all around the country. We do celebrations and kudos and thank yous. We share. We've seen friendships develop right around the country. It's one conversation, one culture. And no special deals. Everybody's on the same deal wherever you are in the country. If you're the brand new candidate or you're the 50-year veteran, everyone's on the same deal. No special deals for someone in the office. And that momentum, folks, of this network effect, of this collaborative community, the momentum we have as a company, I might be wrong, but I think it's going to be very difficult to stop. Okay, then lastly, finishing with this, what this means for you. Well, my belief is that because these 4 indicators of disruption are still relevant for 99% of the estate agencies in South Africa, there is still massive scope for disruption in South Africa. We're only just getting started, and the technology is going to get better and better and better. And folks, what that means for you is this. You can now work at a real estate company where you earn more money, you build a shareholding in US dollars, you create substantial passive income through revenue share, you enjoy complete independence without the burden of ownership, you build your business on the most advanced cloud-based real estate platform, and you belong to the most collaborative, supportive, global agent community in the world, all the while building your future with a brand that is poised for growth, not extinction. eXp Realty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.